As we enter week 7 of the NFL, the Ravens are on a bye and have a lot of explaining to do. They have to look at themselves in the mirror and take a hard look as to why the 2025 season has turned out the way that it has. This has been a season with so much promise that has turned into a nightmare overnight, and there is not one thing that this team can point to as the problem. After last season's divisional round loss to the Buffalo Bills, the Ravens thought they made the necessary changes to finally get over that hump and get that elusive chip, the chip that has eluded them for over a decade. This was supposed to be the year that the Baltimore Ravens were supposedly about to make history. They were supposed to be the first team in the NFL, in NFL history actually, to win a Super Bowl with a quarterback head coach combination with more than 5 years together. And with having Lamar Jackson just come off one of the most dominating seasons for a quarterback in the long story of the NFL, we thought the Ravens were going to go further. And even at that point, it still seemed that if this wasn't even the best iteration of Lamar Jackson, each and every season he just seems to get better and better. So not having the best version of Lamar Jackson yet, we thought the Ravens were going to go further than they had during the season. Derrick Henry still seemed to have it and did not look like he was about to slow down. Zay Flowers was coming off of his first Pro Bowl season, and it's the first Pro Bowl season for a drafted wide receiver in Baltimore Ravens history, and he was projected to be even better. Isaiah likely looked to take over as the tight end one and make this offense seem even more explosive. In the offseason, they added DeAndre Hopkins to be that upgrade over Nelson Aguilar. Defensively, Kyle Van Noy was coming off another career year when it came to sacks. Odafe Owe himself had a double-digit sack season and was entering a contract year, so we expected him to blow up. Tavius Robinson emerged as a force and injected some youth into this pass rush room. The team went out and replaced Brandon Stevens with Jair Alexander and Chido Awuzie. They then drafted Malachi Starks to create more turnovers and let Kyle Hamilton hunt, a move that was thought to be an upgrade to the disappointing free agent signing of Marcus Williams. They also drafted Mike Green to create even more pressure for opposing quarterbacks. So after last season, a season where we were a team that was 2 games away from the Super Bowl, a team that this year has added youth and talent, but it now sits at 1-5, forced to see the reality of what this season really is. So how did we get here? I personally don't know. So what went so wrong that this team struggles to play a full 60-minute game? How could a team that was voted by most to have the best roster in the NFL and the best defense be this bad? In this video today, we will take a look at why this has happened to an organization lauded for its stability and creativity to field a competitive team year in and year out. We will also discuss what some possible fixes could be to get this team back on track to be the team we know that they can actually be. So now let's jump into the season and find out what has happened so far up until the bye week. The start of a new season brings promise and hope to all 32 teams throughout the NFL. Every team starts out 0-0 and believes that they have a shot to win the Super Bowl. But in Baltimore, this is a reality that we live in every single season, especially with Lamar Jackson at quarterback. This is also the belief around the NFL that the Ravens will inevitably be in the mix. But the offseason did not start off the best and may have been a sign for things to come. And these things came immediately. Right after the NFL draft, safety Ardarius Washington tore his Achilles tendon and was likely lost for this season. The perception was that Baltimore was extremely lucky to have drafted Malachi Starks and the defense would not miss a beat. But this injury had far more of an impact than anyone had ever expected. You have to remember that the defense took a turn in 2024 when Washington was inserted into the starting lineup. And experience is hard to replace, and sometimes even the most talented rookies need time to acclimate themselves to the NFL, no matter how good they are. So as this offseason had just begun, one Ravens starter season was actually ending. Then, about a month later, defensive tackle Michael Pierce retired, leaving a gaping hole on the defensive line. But there was actually speculation after the Bills game last season that he was calling it quits. But the GM did very little to maintain or upgrade an already thin defensive line. And speaking of the GM, he himself said you have to build teams starting with the lines. You have to build in the trenches. but decided to ignore that this would be a potential issue until the sixth round of the draft, nor did he bring in any viable free agents that could naturally come in and start for this team. Next, we move to training camp, and Isaiah likely breaks his foot, putting the start of his season in jeopardy, if not only just to slow him getting into football shape and finding his place on the team. He was expected by most to take over for Mark Andrews, but as of then, the team had to move on without him. Simultaneously, Baltimore was dealing with the newly signed cornerback Jair Alexander being in and out of practice, still recovering from a knee injury. Then we had starting fullback Pat Ricard, who injured his calf in mid-August and has been out ever since. So we go from a team that has been relatively healthy the past few seasons to a team that, when the season began, was without three of its starters, another guy that could potentially be a starter, and a starter that we didn't know when or if he could actually be available. So then we move on to the regular season. And finally, the season has begun, and the Ravens get an opportunity to sort of get a measure of revenge against those Buffalo Bills. Here we are, week 1, prime time, and Baltimore gets to show off its improved roster and mentality that is going to lead them to the championship game. But instead, what we got was the Ravens being up 14-25, with the Buffalo Bills getting the ball back with 7 minutes and 16 seconds left in the game, and Baltimore ended up losing 41-40. This defense that was supposed to be and was voted the best in the NFL gave up over 250 yards passing to Josh Allen in the fourth quarter alone. This is the same defense that only had 1 sack the entire game. So once again, the Ravens played not to lose rather than be aggressive and go out and win. And unfortunately, this has been a trend that has happened throughout the tenure of John Harbaugh's career. We get up in games, we take the foot off the gas pedal, and teams inevitably come back and win the game. This is why John Harbaugh has the most double-digit losses in league history. But we cannot place all the blame solely on him. Defensive coordinator Zach Orr played prevent defense for much of the fourth quarter. A prevent defense that actually prevented the Ravens from winning the game. Now the team is 0-1 and needs to regroup to get things together. So here we are, we enter week 2, and it brings back an old friend. Joe Flacco, former Super Bowl MVP winning quarterback, returns to Baltimore for the first time on the opposing sideline, and we could not be happier to see him. The Ravens could not start 0-2 for a consecutive year. Fortunately for this team, we have Lamar Jackson, and his 4 touchdown passes propelled us to a win. But the O-line struggled to open holes, and Derrick Henry only had 23 yards rushing. This game was extremely close until the third quarter, and then Lamar took over. The defense played a lot better from week 1, but we could not really judge the improvement against the Browns because it is the Browns. Things were hard to tell. The defense only gave up 218 yards passing, but you have to look at the quality of quarterback they were playing. This normally stout run defense gave up over 100 yards rushing and only tallied 2 sacks. This is a problem that will haunt this team for the first portion of the season. The opposing quarterbacks have dropped back to pass 94 times, and the Ravens only have 3 sacks to show for it, which is extremely absurd. And to add insult to injury, last season's pass rush sack champion Kyle Van Noy left the game with an injury and would miss the next 2 games. This win gives Baltimore its first win of the season, surprisingly, and they now sit at 1-1 on the season. So now, here we are, Monday Night Football. The Ravens get a rarity and host Monday Night Football for the first time in 4 years. The atmosphere around Baltimore was electric. It was Darkness Falls night, and the stadium was rocking. In comes the Detroit Lions, coming off a 52-point explosion the week prior versus the Chicago Bears. But they were ready to exact revenge on a Ravens team that had embarrassed them 2 seasons prior. But this was a different Baltimore Ravens team. And this was the game where we could actually see how far that this Ravens team has come defensively. If week 2 was a fluke or if they had actually turned a corner. Now, in the game, the Lions get the ball first and march down the field to take a touchdown lead on their first possession. The Ravens go on a 10-play drive to tie the game. Next, both teams trade touchdowns, and the game is tied at 14-14 going into the half. Baltimore then takes the opening possession of the second half and takes their first lead of the game at 21-14. But unfortunately, that was it. Detroit scored the next 14 points and went on to win 38-30. That loss itself was not much of a surprise to the Ravens flock, But the thing that was surprising, the thing that surprised most of the country was how the Ravens were manhandled. The so-called bullies got bullied. Detroit ran for 224 yards, imposing their will on a Baltimore defense in Baltimore. So right now, this defense was down, and it was down bad. They couldn't stop the pass, they couldn't stop the run, and they forgot how to tackle. More importantly, we learned this game that Zach Orr was in way over his head. His calls and play designs left players out of position to make plays and gave Detroit open lanes in the passing game. We also learned how deficient the Ravens were on the offensive line. This line, if you want to call it that, they gave up 7 sacks. Most tried to blame Lamar, saying he held on the ball for way too long. But at this time in the season, he was already injured and couldn't maneuver the way we were accustomed to seeing him move. So once again, the team's outplayed and it's outcoached. The line can't protect and the defense can't stop a nosebleed. So here we are with the Ravens sitting at 1-2, just like last season, but for some reason, this feels a lot different. So at 1-2, the Ravens now sit at a crucial point of the season. And here we are, the week that many of us had circled before the season began. This game may have been more important to the fan base than the Buffalo Bill game, just off the fact that we cannot beat the Kansas City Chiefs no matter what we do. They are the standard in the AFC, and we just do not measure up. But this year was supposed to be different, right?
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Kansas City was down, and it was down bad, just like us sitting at 1-2. The loser would have their worst record in 10 years. This would be a chance for the Ravens, if not just psychologically, to prove that they could beat this team. So the game begins, and the Ravens march down the field and score a touchdown on their first possession. Like, this seems to be a norm for the Ravens. They score on the first possession, and then after that, it's a coin toss. But the Chiefs also come back and score 20 unanswered points. Baltimore then manages to get the score to 13-30, but with injuries to Lamar Jackson, Ronnie Stanley, Roquan Smith, and Nate Wiggins, there was really no coming back. This Ravens defense got Kansas City back on track, and the Chiefs scored 30 points for the first time since Alf was on television.
It's broken. Ha! Yeah, kill me.
Lamar left the game with an injury, who many thought was faking it, and the defense just managed 1 sack. We now have enough evidence to prove to even the most purplest of Kool-Aid drinkers that this is a poorly constructed team.
Oh no!
Oh yeah!
That even when healthy isn't capable of winning a championship. This team lacks discipline, leadership, and a desire to win. So through 4 games, the Ravens are now 1-3 with the worst defense and defensive coordinator in the league. They have given up 30-plus points in 3 of the first 4 games with no end in sight. So surely moves will be made with so much of the season in front of us. Nope. So now this team sits at 1-3 with not much to hope for. Injuries are mounting up, team morale seems low, and there seems to be no adjustments made to fix any of the problems we have. But luckily for us, in comes the Houston Texans in week 5.
Throw it. It's caught for the touchdown. Hangs in there, throws. It's caught for the touchdown. Again, Stroud, end zone. Touchdown. Could go all the way and does. Pitch, soft toss. It's handled. Noel is in for the touchdown.
Oh, I guess not. Many of us thought that this Texans team would bring about a confidence boost for a team that was down and almost out. Houston was 2-11 versus B-More and had never in their history won a game in Baltimore. Last season, they lost 31-2 on Christmas Day and have never, and I mean never, scored a touchdown in the 3 games that CJ Stroud has quarterbacked. This was the perfect get-right game for the Baltimore Ravens. The Texans struggled to score and had managed 20 points just once this season, and that 20 points came in the game prior against the hapless Tennessee Titans. This is a team that struggles to score versus a team that lets everyone score. Who's going to win? But it turns out that we were even worse. In the game without Lamar Jackson, the Ravens put up a whopping 10 points behind the electrifying 179-yard, 3-interception game by Cooper Rush. This Ravens run game was no better. Derrick Henry rushed for 33 yards, which was his 4th straight game under 50 yards rushing. The Ravens defense fared no better, giving up a season-high 44 points. They gave up 4 touchdown passes to CJ Stroud, who had never led a touchdown scoring drive versus the Ravens ever. This is some shit you just can't make up. Stroud and Nick Chubb ran all over this defense, a defense that was not opposed to letting Houston do exactly whatever it wanted. But this defense did get 2 sacks, one by Kyle Van Noy in his return, and the O-line only gave up 1 sack, but a lifetime worth of pressure. So, with what was thought to possibly be the easiest game of the Baltimore Ravens' first 6 games, it was not. Baltimore got thumped and fell to 1-4 on the season. But change was coming, and things were about to look up.
I see no changes.
So now we are the last game before the Ravens get a bye. And before the week 6 matchup with the Los Angeles Rams, the Ravens went out and signed safety C. Gardner Johnson to the practice squad to infuse some life into this defense. Gardner, a talented former Super Bowl winner, would surely bring some dog to this team. Then came the shocker of all shockers. Odafe Owe was traded to the Chargers for safety Aloha Gilman. And yes, I know I keep saying safety. Damn. A move that did not make sense to many, me included. The Ravens had already had 2 first-round safeties. There's that word again. So why would we need even more? That is because our GM does not know what he is actually doing. The team already struggles to not get to the quarterback, and you trade a double-digit sack guy. Okay, so I guess it's time to go on and play LA. This was a game to many of us that thought that the Ravens would get smoked, but in actuality, they actually held their own. Baltimore took a 3-0 lead and fought hard in this game. The defense seemed to have turned a corner and made some nice stops. Even though the Rams aided them in this, the defense played better overall. Ultimately, a Zay Flowers fumble and Cooper Rush being Cooper Rush led to the Ravens falling 17-3. This was a huge positive that they didn't give up 30 points again, but the negative part is that the offense is in shambles. Even though Derrick Henry rushed for 122 yards, the offense was putrid. This offense just cannot get along without Lamar Jackson. And with these improvements aside, the team is currently sitting at 1-5 with a very slight chance to make the playoffs. But do we actually want Baltimore to make the playoffs? I am conflicted. Yes, I would love for the Ravens to reach the playoffs, to give us more accolades, to say when Lamar Jackson is healthy, relatively, the Ravens make it to the playoffs. But I know that if we get to the playoffs, we're going to get beat. This defense is not championship level. It is not ready to compete against the better offenses throughout the AFC. I'm not saying that we should tank, but I'm not saying that we should go to the playoffs either. The Ravens need to get better draft seeding to give Eric DeCosta a better opportunity to get a player to make a difference on this team. Maybe, just maybe, if we draft in the top 10, Eric DeCosta will stop going for projects and actually go for production. But this is just me. I do not know.
I tell you, I do not know. But you must know. How can I know when I do not know? I don't know.
So here we are entering the bye week with 1 win and 5 losses. They say that Lamar and Roquan should return in week 8 and Hard R. Ricard should make his season debut. Is this too little too late? It's kind of hard to tell, but no matter what happens, this roster is extremely flawed. And the leadership surrounding it is flawed as well. They knew that this team in the trenches was severely lacking during the offseason and did nothing to improve it. The head coach knows the O-line is horrible and refuses to make changes. His refusal got our quarterback hurt once again, but his stubbornness will derail this team. Baltimore could have stolen a crucial game versus the Rams, but the GM didn't make any viable trades for any kind of pass rush help. Instead, continued to build around Kyle Hamilton rather than build around Lamar Jackson. And to me, 2-4 sounds a lot better than 1-5, especially when we have reinforcements on the way after the bye. There is enough blame to go around for everyone to get their slice of the pie. But the lack of leadership and the lack of direction have a team that was thought of to be bound for the Super Bowl to become the laughingstock of the league. Shit, even the Bengals, with 82-year-old Joe Flacco, beat the division-leading Pittsburgh Steelers, who were playing without their sack leader Trey Hendrickson. Bad teams are finding ways to win, injuries aside, while we are sitting here searching for an identity. So where do we go from here? What moves can we make to get back into the playoff picture? Unfortunately for this team, there are too many holes to make this a championship level, and there are too many things to correct during this season ongoing. So, what changes will be made during the bye to get back to being the Ravens, to get back to playing like a Raven? Lamar Jackson by himself returning makes a world of difference. But if you think about it, we have to remember this team is 1-3 with him. This is a flawed team from top to bottom. The schedule gets a lot easier, but do those wins make up for the lackluster play from a team that seems to be uninspired? All we can do as a fan base is sit back and let this disastrous season play out. So much hope, so much potential has gone down the drain because we have someone who actually knows what it takes to build a team because he said it himself, but took the opposite approach. We have a coach that has to prove a point instead of doing what is best for this team, and a roster that at times look like it has given up on the coach, it has given up on this organization, it has given up on this season. So once again, where do we go from here?
Tell me where do we go? Where do we go?
Well, we have a week to figure it out before the Bears come calling.